is Otaku Lucifer, and this is the B Savage Podcast. On today's B Savage Podcast, we have a special episode where we will be focusing on people's reaction to the masterpiece by Ryan Coogler called Sinners. But before we get started, a little message from a beautiful black woman.
Just a quick reminder, diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't the reason the stock market is crashing right now. It's because you gave a white man who's unqualified a job just because a qualified black woman applied for it.
Oh,
Have the day you deserve. Bye.
Everybody coming out with these 18-part takes about the movie Sinners. The movie was a great movie. Jesus wasn't at the center of it. That's all, bro. Jesus didn't come save the day after the preacher's son disobeyed his father in going in the first place, and he got to his wits' end about to get murdered by a fucking vampire, and he was just like, Jesus, please help! And the vampire said, ha ha ha, bitch, I'm Irish. When them people brought us across this water, they tried to make me believe in Jesus too. So I'm gonna show you it doesn't work. I'm gonna baptize you while praying with you, and then I'm gonna make you into a vampire anyway, bitch. That's why Christians are mad. I'm tired of these takes. Yo, y'all are used to Christian-centered movies, okay, where the most vile, disgusting things can be going on. And one person goes, oh, Jesus, please help! And the fucking sky parts and Jesus comes down and saves the day because they threw a cross across the room. That didn't happen this time. The vampire said, fuck you. The Jesus ain't working over here, bro. It was a religion they gave all of us, and I said I didn't want it. Y'all should say you don't want it, but look at you. Look at you, about to get killed by a vampire. People mad because the little African spirituality girl was the girl who had the most power in the whole motherfucking movie. She was the most knowledgeable. She knew what the fuck she was doing. She all that. She kept people safe, all that, up until she died. Okay? I don't even like Christian-centered movies. They have too many happy endings. I mean, happy endings for the wrong people. If this was a Jesus-centered movie, the Grand Wizard at the end would have lived. He would have just went to his family without dumping that clip into him. But he didn't. He dumped that motherfucking clip. He went to go live in paradise with his wife and kid. That's what happened. Spoiler alert.
I watched Sinners, and I'm not so sure if I'm the one to speak on this, but one of the many lessons I learned from it is there's so much power in shutting the fuck up. Come on in! What are you doing? Shut up. Why is your vengeance and anger so much more important than your solidarity to the black community who has been there for you, who has uplifted you since the very beginning? Oh, it's because you're only willing to participate if you profit off of them. As a store clerk. Now, there's a lot of history there. But suddenly, the moment you're oppressed, the moment your proximity to whiteness widens, you're willing to throw everyone who has supported you under the bus to get your piece? Look at you. That being said, I'm going to shut the fuck up now.
I like that. That was funny.
I feel like I'm the odd man out because I'm the only one who don't like Sinners, who didn't like it. Like, it was long, it was drawn out, it felt like demonic, and there was a bunch of stuff going on in that movie. But y'all like it, so y'all do you.
It was a vampire movie. Of course it's going to be demonic. Like, what?
I'm going to speculate on something kind of dark, and I hope that I'm wrong, but I don't think that I am. The kind of white people who didn't like Sinners, they only want to watch historically accurate narratives about, like, the African American community, historically going back, if that community is depicted in misery, being harmed, being tortured, unhappy. It's really fucked up. Like, it's really fucked up to notice, but I have noticed that, like, the type of people who didn't like Sinners, like, they'll sit through 12 Years a Slave. They'll say they loved that, but they're less down to watch a historically accurate narrative when that narrative also includes Black folks being empowered in community, having loving relationships, being able to own businesses, make something for themselves, and generally having a narrative that is not, like, steeped in, like, the historicity of slavery. By the way, they are also very happy to watch narratives where Black folks are being empowered by white people. So, like, white ally, sort of less historically accurate, superficial fairy tale takes, like something like The Help, right? Like, they'll love that. They love that. But anything where the African American community historically is making things happen for themselves and doing it without white people, not interested. And those are the types of people I'm seeing who are white, who are saying like, I don't really know if like Sinners really did it for me. Was it maybe because the black people weren't being like horrifically tortured in front of your eyes? Is there something about that that makes that more palatable for you? And if so, should you like really fucking think about things?
Y'all part of the Klan? First of all, Black Lives Matter.
Bro,
This
get
motherfucker
out,
an
get
ally.
out.
How do you say I know how you like to be licked in your native language? I got plans. Oh, you can't let us in because we're...
That's clearly the reason.
Got you. Yeah. I ain't trying to go to none of them white places, though.
No,
There's
it
no
can't
season
happen.
in there. Yeah, y'all gonna have to get bit, unfortunately.
This is not accomplishing what you're thinking it's accomplishing.
Y'all mad at us because we vampires, but when are we gonna focus on the real enemy here? England.
Not
when are we
wrong.
gonna focus
That's a
on
very fair
them
point.
people?
That's a fair
See, we
point.
family.
No, we not.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Y'all let Haley Steinfeld in there, no problem. But Ireland's where you draw the line. Okay, I'm sensing some bias. Cornbread. I love me some cornbread. Yeah, you better get eaten, homie. Peace, love, freedom, equality.
Come on in, motherfuckers!
I look good when I did that? That look good? All right, cool. Let's get to killing.
Get off of your knee, white man.
What's y'all problem? Like, y'all don't want to be happy? Now we gonna walk away real slow, just in case y'all change y'all mind.
Get out of here!
I have to stop it right here, only because Remick was an amazing character in the fact that not only was he an Irish vampire, who was on this kind of like quest after he heard Sammy's music to reconnect with his ancestry, with his with his origins, but he's also a character that if he wasn't a vampire, he'd be down for the struggle. That like you kind of got that vibe from him, because he kept, just like this guy said, he kept like with this energy of, dude, I know I'm a vampire, right? But am I really the enemy? I mean, like, we know who the real enemy is, right? And it's not me. He's just like, come over on this side and you'll be happy. But if you stay, them other white folk, those white folk who ain't the good white folk, they're gonna come after your ass. Like he was really on that type of energy. And I think that's one of the things that made him like a really great character. Because you knew, like, I kept saying to myself, if he wasn't a vampire, he'd be up in the barn fighting with those black people to, like, against the Klan. Like, it was crazy. But yeah, he gave the vibe that if he wasn't a vampire, you would invite him to the cookout, definitely. But he was the bad guy, and he was he had this weird charm to him. But and he was funny. It was like the stuff that he was doing in the film was like hilarious, because he kept going like, I'm not the real enemy. You know who the real enemy is, right? It's the division. It's the people who don't want unity. He was that dude. Anyway, the next one.
3 for boys. Hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road and all the way to Dublin, Wakpalolida. From there I got away, my spirits never failing, landed on the quay just as the ship was sailing. Captain Atlee.
That's another funny thing, is the fact that he was doing, like, I guess it's called the Irish jig or something like that, or like Lord of the Dance. That if you know what Lord of the Dance is, it's that type of dancing. I don't know what it's called.
On some of your threads, you said you admire the film's visual creativity, but you have issues with the anti-Christian propaganda. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, man. I want to. So first and foremost, I don't want nobody to get it misconstrued or twisted. It is a phenomenal movie. I saw it twice. I think you gotta take your hat off to Ryan Coogler. You gotta take your hat off to Michael B. Jordan. The doors is opening for Black creatives in filmmaking. Phenomenal. The thing that I was mentioning specifically for Christians is that oftentimes Christianity and colonization get married together unnecessarily. And I think this film depicts the Christian faith as a colonized white man's religion that is oppressive. Now, did white people use Christianity to oppress Black folks and other minorities in history? Absolutely. But just because it was used as a tool of oppression does not discount its relevance, its power, its potency. It's also something that was created in the Eastern world. It didn't start in Europe. It started in ancient Israel, in the ancient Near East. It went to Ethiopia. It was in Africa before it was in Europe. So that's just some of the stuff I was like, yo, man, I know us as Black people, especially the conscious community, got a lot of issues with Christianity because of that. And it popped up in the movie. You know, there was lines where it was like, yeah, blues came from us, unlike that religion that was forced on us. And I'm like, that's not true. There was a forcing of religion, but we had it before they came and forced it on us. And so that's the stuff that I was just like, yo, man, I just want there to be more clarity as it pertains to that.
In all actuality, for me, from my perspective, it's the Bible is, everybody has their own interpretation of it, right? And we, as we know, Southern Baptists, Christians, all of the different iterations of the Bible, we interpret it different. I think they just was taught it was a period piece, right? And I get what you could say. It's a period piece, and that's we were getting a peek into that world. Yeah. And at that time, it was used to control in certain towns. In small towns, use religion to really grab hold of culture, right? So I think it was just us taking a peek inside of it.
The next person coming up is actually in response to this guy. They both have like really good takes on the same idea. Check it out.
Mission is specifically for Christians is that oftentimes Christianity and colonization get married together unnecessarily. And I think this film depicts the Christian faith as a colonized white man's religion that is oppressive.
That's the entire plot point, Lecrae, and it's not propaganda because it's the truth. See, the plot point is that in 1932 Mississippi, those Jim Crow white Southerners used Christianity first to colonize the world. You cannot separate colonization from Christianity. You can separate Christianity from colonization, but you cannot separate colonization from Christianity because Christianity was the tool used to colonize the earth. So you have that group of people who have now colonized the world, who are now enacting Jim Crow laws in Jesus' name, who are good Christian folks who wish that slavery wasn't done and are doing personal and structural harm to the Black people. You can't separate and absolve Christianity from it. And in doing so, you're rewriting history. And you get so close to the point when you start talking about the fact that it's an Eastern religion that developed in Ethiopia and in Africa before it went to Europe, which is why colonization and Christianity are so insidious. Because once it made its way to Europe, it became a tool to colonize the world. And so white supremacy used Christianity and then painted Jesus in whiteface in order to take over the world. You can't pretend like that didn't happen. It did, and that's the plot point. And so to pretend like it wasn't the case in 1932 Mississippi is to rewrite history in the same way that they're trying to rewrite history in Florida and rewrite and eliminate all Black history around the world. Like when you do that, you are doing the work of white supremacists for them, Lecrae. Christianity does not have to be intrinsically tied to white supremacy. White supremacy does not exist without Christianity, and that's the point. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I'm saying I love both their takes on this. It's only because they're both right, except for the one dude who said started in Israel. It actually started in Africa, but it is Christianity, and I am a Reformed Christian, right? I grew up in the church, wanted to be a priest, wanted to go to seminary. I was in youth ministries. I was a youth ministry leader. So I understand fully what the first gentleman is saying about how, and especially if he's still a Christian, he wants to defend the religion, right? But I also agree, and I can see what the other guy is saying, who critiqued him, who said that it was the tool used to colonize the earth, right? Christianity, as we know it, is not even the original form of Christianity. There's literally thousands of forms or hundreds to thousands of subsets of the denomination or of Christianity. So there's a whole bunch of denominations, right? You have Lutherans, you have Jesuits, you have Martinists, you have Episcopalians. I used to be an Episcopalian. You have Catholics, you have Christians, you have Southern Baptists, you have all of these different. You have Pentecostals, right? You have all of these different variants of the same religion, right? And none of them wholly agree with each other. That's one thing. And then you have the fact that because there's so many separate versions of Christianity, and that's not even the original form of Christianity, it's the watered down version, it's Western Christianity. Even in that, you find out that things like the Geneva Bible, which was more whole than, say, the Ethiopian Bible, which is not more whole, but more whole than the King James Bible. You find out that the reason why the Geneva Bible was banned was because it had information in there that King didn't want. So a new version was written. I think the King James Bible came out after the Geneva Bible, but it was considered contraband. You would be executed if you had that book, right? Because they didn't want people to understand and learn things. This is why when slavery started happening in the West, by white Europeans, they created a version of the Bible that was even more bastardized, right? The King James Bible was created off of a king's ego, right? He didn't like certain things and he wanted to do certain things, so he had the Bible rewritten, so he could get certain things done. The slave Bible was the same thing. It was about their ego, and they didn't want slaves to know the truth. They didn't want them to know their history, so they changed it up and they focused on certain parts of the Bible that would, out of context, make it seem like slaves should be thankful to their masters, right? But none of the slave owners wanted to be slaves, but yet they wanted to have slaves understand that you should be thankful to us for the nonsense. So they're both right, and I agree with them. They both had really good takes on it. But anyway, and I love the whole fact that Sinners is getting people in the Black community to start to discuss these things, because these are very relevant, powerful things that we need to look at as a community. Next one.
Blues is at the center of this film, and we all know that some of the best music comes from pain, but there is a scene in this movie that connected the dots for me in a way that has never been done for me in my life before. And of course, if you know what I'm talking about, it's the scene in the car. And the way that this story of pain literally transitions into a song was so beautiful.
Thank you.
What was it like showcasing really the core of what blues is?
I got to give credit first and foremost to Ryan, because that's what he wrote. I said to Ryan before we shot that scene, man, we need to go through it a few times. I need to find my sea legs, because in actuality, it was a much longer monologue. It was a 3-page monologue.
I would have loved that.
And I would have loved it.
Yeah.
That's another story. but no, he kept the meat of the thing. So he gave me the space to rehearse. Then he gave me and us, the three of us in the car, the space to work the scene. And the musical piece was an improv. It was not written. It came from what I was feeling in the moment. And my two colleagues in the car went with it. Mike principally, because I'm not sure Miles knew quite what to do. He's a young actor, and that's not a criticism. He wasn't quite sure. But Mike went with it, and Mike spoke and said, man, you got that guitar, man. And he picked, and Ryan kept the camera rolling. So the whole thing was embraced. I cannot tell you how gratifying it is to sit here and hear how that scene impacted you as an audience member. Because the first cut that we saw in Los Angeles, they had cut that monologue out.
Yeah.
And I went to Ryan, I said, man, you can't cut it out, man. And here's why. It wasn't just a complaint from an actor. It was, these are the reasons why this monologue has to be in this film. And he heard me. And he agreed with me. And so it's back in. So for you to say to me, this is what this meant to me, and these were the dots that were connected, it's everything, man. It's everything.
It is so amazing to find out that particular scene, because when you see the movie, spoiler alert, you find out that it's about the scene is when Slim, which was Delroy Lindo's character, and you know what, give it up to Delroy Lindo. That man is a national treasure. He's one of the most greatest yet underrated actors out there. But the fact that scene was improvised is amazing, because the scene was about the pain and struggle and how the blues gets generated and created from pain. You know, how Black people in this country have been able to repeatedly take our pain and turn it into beauty. You know, it's crazy, because he told a story about some friends, and one of his friends had gotten caught by some racists, and they lynched him. They lynched his friend, all because they thought he stole money that he had worked for. That's how crazy it is. It was, you know, throughout this film, it's little nuggets, right, of information and of the Black experience, right? Things that happened back then that are still relevant even today for Black people in this country. A lot of white people wouldn't understand, only because they haven't, as a culture in this country, faced the type of hurdles and obstacles that we have. So, you know, it's funny, because even in the film, one of the characters who is white presenting would have been considered Black. Back then, that would have been enough for you to be a slave, right? So you could have looked like her and be white, or look white, be white presenting, and still be a slave. And the pain that people went through is crazy. And just how he was able to translate finding out about his friend's death, and he translated that pain into a blues song. It was phenomenal. Next one.
I remember there was one part that I could never get out of my head.
I ain't even finna lie. We about to spoil all of Sinners, so if you ain't seen it, you might as well skip this video.
It was the part in the movie where the Asian woman or Chinese woman, she's like right after Stack, I believe it is.
He gets turned?
Yeah. He like dead in the other room or whatever. Everyone's like freaking out because they're like, what the fuck's going on? Bro's like, yeah, y'all gotta go home. The Asian woman, she goes like, let's go. And the dude she's with, she's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, no, we're here to help them with the party, not with this. And I was like, damn, that went over so many.
That went over.
The thing that part represented speaks to like what we talk so much about, how there's obviously intertwining between Asian and Black culture in like the United States. Asian people in our communities that own like beauty supply stores or that have like restaurants or whatever, which is like helping in the sense that like you're providing resources to like this community. But when it comes to an issue within the Black community, when it comes to our lives being on the line,
they not with
our
you.
Safety,
when it comes to the demons at the door,
when it comes to the demon at the door, come to the door and start speaking your language. Affirmative action on that part of the show is so genius. It's when the vampires or the white people come to the door and the dude starts speaking Mandarin, saying, "Oh, it's better over here. You don't gotta be with like the Black people, whatever." X, Y, Z. What is that? That is the white man like sweet talking the Asian people, which is exactly what the fuck happened during the affirmative action shit. They literally took Asian people, weaponized and said, "Damn, y'all not getting into these schools. That's why we got to get diversity programs the fuck out of here." They will convince you that you're not suffering from the same like discrimination, the same racist ass views they have about you by speaking your language, by talking you up, by making you feel confident.
The whole scene they're talking about was very complex, only because there's only 3 Asian characters in the whole film, and they're a family. You understand there's a different relationship between the twins and Bo, because you could tell that there's a lot of love between those 3 guys, right? As opposed to Grace, she's more like an outsider. Even though she is Asian and she's part of the community, you could tell she didn't grow up in the community. Whereas, you know, Bo did. He grew up with Smoke and Stack, and you could see it. And I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people say that things might have been different if it was Bo inside the building with them instead of Grace. But the thing is that, you know, I give Grace, and it's kind of apropos that Ryan Coogler went and named the character Grace, because you have to give her grace in the situation that she was faced with, which was, you have a group of vampires, you just found out that your husband is one of them, and they just threatened to go into town and get your daughter and turn her into one too. So any parent is going to be like, yeah, fuck no, right? But it was all like to get her or get someone to invite them in. And that's another thing that was really classic, right? That Coogler kept in when it came to the mythos of the vampires, which is you have to be invited in. But things like the gentleman in the beginning said, right? You praying to God, to Jesus, is not going to work. You know, I'll pray with you. I'm a vampire. They taught me that when they went and stole the land for me and my family, and they took us across the ocean and they did all these horrible things to us too. They taught us this about this white man named Jesus too. Let's pray together, because it kind of, you know, brought me comfort as well, even though I know it's bullshit. Like, that's literally how Remick was in that scene. But with the same scene with Grace, it's a hard scene, and their analysis was really good. Again, I love the conversations that are coming off of this film. Next one.
How did they do this in Sinners? It'll surprise you. In this scene, Michael B. Jordan seamlessly passes a smoke to himself. Easily done, right? According to Ryan Coogler, this is the most complicated shot in the entire film, but it's worth it. Most movies, including many times in Sinners, make a twin shot by simply doing it twice and dividing the frame. Shooting a scene from one side of the conversation, usually with a stand-in, and then filming the other side. It's then combined in post to make it look like you have a twin. But for this scene, to pull off the physical interaction between the two, it required an extremely high level of precision, even though the method was still more or less the same. It just needed a few highly technical additions to pull off. First, they used what's called a techno dolly, essentially a giant robot arm that can recreate the exact same camera movement over and over again. They then used a series of loud electronic beeps to coordinate exactly where the actors and the props would be on a certain timing. It was like music set to a choreographed dance. Because of this symmetry, each and every take was exactly the same, no matter which role Michael B. was in. They could then seamlessly overlay the different shots of him, layering him over top of his stand-in. They also filmed this over 17 times in the boiling Louisiana sun. So this was also an incredible task, not just for the camera crew and the actors, but also the makeup crew and the wardrobe department. When Michael is sweating through his suit and the prop masters having to keep the real prop lit at the same timing, everyone had to work in tandem to keep all of that exactly the same for each shot. So why go to this much effort for such a short scene? It's because this scene is actually really important, whether you realized it or not. It's this simple gesture at the very beginning of the movie that doesn't just give you an idea of these characters and how they interact with each other, but also solidifies these two people as separate in your mind. Mentally, it makes them both real, even though it's one guy. It's so effective that an entire generation is probably going to think Michael B. Jordan actually has a twin, just like we all did for Lindsay Lohan in the 2000s. It won't even be your fault for believing that, because this looks so good, and it perfectly sets the tone for the rest of the film, despite being less than a minute. If you haven't seen this movie yet, what are you waiting on?
When I think about how the Chinese came and just settled in the Delta from Memphis to Vicksburg, I mean, just look at it. It really filled a particular need because nobody else wanted to do it.
These stores played a uniquely important role in the segregated South, serving the black community when the white community wouldn't. And this was significant because it meant more than 70% of the population got their groceries and everyday goods from a tiny Chinese community. Frida's family store in Min Sang started out in the 1930s as two different buildings across the street from each other, one serving black people, the other serving white people. Neither black nor white, the Chinese community found themselves in the middle.
It was like a 3-lane road. There were the whites and the blacks and the Chinese. We all stayed in our lanes and we were fine until we crossed over.
The The Chinese grocers depended on the black community for business and also served them in very practical ways.
It's funny because there is literally a scene. This is one of the nuggets that Coogler put into the film, where he literally had a scene where Grace and her husband Bo, they owned a business and they owned two shops, and they were literally across the street from each other. And I remember I pointed this out to my wife, where, you know, Grace was in the shop where the white people were, and Bo was in the shop where the black people were. And they had to like switch up and cross the street. It's crazy. But again, that's one of the nuggets and one of the great things about the film. Next one.
I cannot believe this scene was almost cut from Sinners. Spoiler alert for those who have not seen Sinners, but this particular scene was so impactful to me personally, I need to talk about it. So there's a scene where Stack, Sammy, and Delta Slim are riding in the car. The conversation comes up about a friend of Slim's that was brutally lynched. Slim, played by Delroy Lindo, is telling the story, and you could see the weight of this horrific story on his physical countenance. You could hear him getting choked up in his throat. But he does something very, very interesting and really, really cultural at this particular part. Rather than crying outright, which he had every bit of room to do, he starts to pat his leg. And that pat, to try to get the aggression that he feels from the overwhelm of emotions about his friend's violent end, becomes a beat. And then a moan rises up from his belly. That moan becomes a song. Stack turns to Sammy and says, "You got that guitar?" Sammy begins to play, and that woeful expression becomes a bluesy song. But I think it's really interesting because that song could have become anything. From that wail, a field song could emerge. From that wail, a chain gang song could emerge. From that wail, gospel could have emerged. From that wail, blues emerged. And as a person who has seen my elders and now some of my ancestors do that same thing, to process grief and let it become something. I've seen it at funerals and repasts where some of my elder fathers have pat out that pain, pat it out on their legs. I've seen it with some of my elder mothers where that wail and that moan becomes some sort of praise song, some sort of offering lifted up. And that scene was almost cut from the movie. Delroy Lindo had to advocate for that particular scene to Ryan Coogler, the writer and director of the film. And I'm so glad he did, because in that expression, in that moment, I got to personally see my own folks again. Folks that have gone on, folks who didn't have the benefit of being outwardly upset about something. And so they pat to help them process grief. They wailed and they moaned to express pain and ache, and how those wailings and moanings became songs that we carry with us, that there is meaning to all of this. It's a reminder that our music and our art is not just for consumption. It's not just for appropriation when it's trendy, that our souls are wrapped up in this stuff, that our culture, that our heritage, that our people, that who we are is wrapped up in this stuff, that our stories and our heritage is wrapped up in this stuff, and that we shouldn't lose it, and that we should hold on to it, and that we should remember those whose only choice, they couldn't shout, they couldn't scream, they had to pat and wail. So just wanted to share that.
I went and watched Sinners last night, and I think we can all agree.
Next one.
I went and watched Sinners last night, and I think we can all agree that we wanted more of the indigenous lore. But there was honestly so many storylines that I wanted more of. Like, I could have watched 10 hours of that. But I want to talk about, like, the indigenous perspective. I loved someone's take. I can't remember who it was, but she was talking about why maybe the indigenous people were just like, yeah, it's getting dark and we gotta go. last night, and I think we can all agree that we wanted more of the indigenous lore, but there was honestly so many storylines that I wanted more of. Like, I could have watched 10 hours of that, but I want to talk about like the indigenous perspective. I loved someone's take. I can't remember who it was, but she was talking about why maybe the indigenous people were just like, yeah, it's getting dark and we gotta go. And at that point, like if you think about Jim Crow era, there was already a forcible removal of the Choctaw people from their traditional homelands, which is Mississippi and Alabama. So through the Trail of Tears, they were actually forcibly removed to Oklahoma. So at that point, that was like 100 years prior. They had already been decimated and repopulated because they weren't even considered a nation until like mid-30s. So same time period. So why would you willingly put your people through that, right? I don't blame them. I feel like they dropped some gems and then we're out of there. But I hope that we do get more.
The whole fact that there were vampire hunters in the beginning of that film and they never came back was the one thing that I hated about the film. The film was like a 10 out of 10 except for that. Because I was just like, yo, there's vampire hunters in here. And the Native Americans, they're Native Indigenous, and they came out and, you know, Remick was running from them. He was on his last legs and they were about to just like off him. And by the grace of whatever God he prayed to, he survived and lived and for another day. And then, you know, wrought chaos upon the community. But the Native Americans, they came and they were like, hey, there's a really bad dude around. Have you seen him? Because if you have, you need to let us know because we need to take care of this like right now. You know, the sun is going down and we need to get him right now. So if you let us in, let us, you know, we'll take care of him. If he's in there. Is he in there? And they were like, nah, he's not in there. And then they left. They're like, all right, if you say so. And they left. And I was expecting these people to show up at the last minute, you know, like some type of like heroes, and they never showed up. They never showed up, but they were the ones who like knew what Remick was. They knew, you know, how to kill him. They knew everything. Like this dude was shook, and it was only like 3 or 4 of them, and he was terrified of them. Terrified. Anyway, next one.
So I just recently saw this, and it's actually pretty deep. It talks about the difference between Bo and his wife Mary in the movie Sinners. And I've been thinking about how to make this video for a while, because I have thoughts on the 3 Asians in Sinners. There may have been more, but I'm talking about Bo and their daughter Lisa. Because what you may or may not have noticed is that Bo, his store was on the black side of town, while Mary, her store was on the white side of town. Bo actually had a relationship with the twins and was for the black community. Mary, however, was very transactional and she serviced the white side of town, thus making her more disconnected with the black community and the twins. Here's where we start getting into a little bit of spoilers. When everything started popping off, Bo wanted to stay and help because Bo was for the community. She was like, we don't owe these Negroes anything. And ultimately, when it came to her and hers, she sold out the entire group. So this shows us the 3 different relationships that black people have with the Asian community. Because there is a very, very strong connection between blacks and Asians that goes beyond the store owners and the stores that are in the hood. But the culture, the shared appreciation of culture, we see that in Bo. While his wife, Mary, represents the transactional relationship. This is the stores that are in the hood, the beauty stores, the bodegas. That's represented in Mary. And what's also represented in Mary and in Lisa is the thought that their children are being affected by black issues, namely affirmative action. Because if you didn't know this, the reason why affirmative action was dismantled was because Asian people brought cases to the Supreme Court saying that their children were being denied access into big schools because black people, unqualified black people, were getting in. So while not all Asian people are like this, some are for the community because they have grown up and they are connected and there's a mutual appreciation. You have this type of Asian who is not connected to the community. It only uses the community for transactional purposes. But when it comes to their children, they're gonna burn everything down to make sure that their kids are all right. And that's why in the movie Sinners, when it came to Lisa, she was willing to throw everybody under the bus. But even before that, she wasn't really trying to help because she is not for the community. But it's not all Asians. Some people are very much for the community, and we should be thankful for those allies. But it's a very, very complex relationship.
That's very, very true.
The actress who played Grace in Spinners knew we were all going to drag her, and she asked Ryan Coogler to make a very specific change to help soften the blow. I was at a screening of Sinners where she kind of had a panel at the end and talked a bit about her character. While she was reading through her script, she felt like there wasn't enough context to why her character did what she did. Spoiler, she basically tells all the zombies to come in. If you remember, right before she tells them, "Come in, motherfuckers," or whatever she says, there's a montage of her husband and her kid and basically all the things that are going through her head. And it kind of makes you like, okay, I kind of get it. Like, you lost your man, your baby is by herself, and they all know where your baby is. Like, they could go get your baby right now. If they really wanted to, they could have snatched her up at any time of the night just to, like, bring the heat. That montage wasn't there before, but because she spoke up, it got added in. I think that helps. I know that she is still a hated character, but if that were me, I would have felt conflicted. I don't know. I don't know if I would have been able to just sit there all night and trust that my child was okay. So good for her. Good for her for speaking up. We still hate Grace a little bit, though.
Excuse me, man. Did y'all happen to let in a burning, terrifying-looking white man into your home earlier? He's of great danger to you.
No, we didn't. Go away.
And that's all I need to hear. Have yourself a great night. All right, round up the horses. Let's get this going. Y'all enjoy the rest of this movie as well, because I'm not about to be sticking around for this shit. Vampires, I'm going home. But enjoy the rest of your night.
He's hilarious. But no, literally, that's what the vampire hunters did. The Native Americans were the heroes. They were the heroes, I guess, that never got the chance to fulfill their duty or their mission. But yeah, they came in and they were regulating, boy. Like, they came in and they just rode in. One of them had a car, and Remick was in fear for his little vampire life. Until again he convinced other white folk. Remick was that character where you could tell he plays both sides of the fence, right? Or both sides of the field, because he was like on some ish. He was like, look, I'm white, you're white. To the racist, he was like, look, I'm white, you're white. We should help each other, right? But then to the black folks, he's just like, look, we know it's really them, those racists over there, that they're the real problem. I'm just a vampire. I'm just going to bite you and turn you into a vampire. I mean, I might actually eat you, but still, I'm not the worst thing that could happen to you in this life. You know, like, that's really what he was on. He was on that. And, but he was hilarious. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was the fact that I realized when it came to the relationship with Bo and Grace, the reason for Bo's downfall was that he was always with the black community. Had he stayed with the black community, he would have lived. But instead, he went and listened to his wife and was just like, you know what? We should leave. We don't owe them anything. And when he did that, he ended up screwing himself over. And that's another one of those nuggets, one of those like little gems that you know, Ryan Coogler has like spread throughout the entire film. Anyway, next one.
One of my biggest Sinners hot takes is that if Bo was left inside instead of Grace, most of the people inside of there would still be alive. And this is because I don't think Bo would have betrayed Smoke or Stack. I think that is evident when they meet for the first time again after all of those years. Smoke walks into Bo's grocery store, and Bo is well aware of the commotion going on outside, but he doesn't blink an eye because he knows exactly who he's dealing with here. These two, or I guess the three of them, Bo, Smoke, and Stack, had been friends for a while. They're close with the family, they know the wife, and it's evident they had worked together, and Bo is quite accepting of the business that they're in. Hell, Grace is too, to an extent, but I could see even the pushback with her getting a little bit irritated that they're back in town. Might have caused some problems later, but I was hoping that of the business that they're in. Hell, Grace is too, to an extent, but I could see even the pushback with her getting a little bit irritated that they're back in town. Might have caused some problems later, but I was hoping that would not be the case. But anyways, back to my hot take, which is, had Bo been left inside, most of the people in the juke joint would still be alive, although I don't know if the vampires would have figured out a more clever way to get inside. I am disappointed that Annie was the one to betray them all. And honestly, as I still think about the film, I don't know what the alternative was. I think they might have always been hunted for as long as they lived, because I don't see that group of vampires moving on. So, I don't know what the outcome would have been had they survived anyways. Drop your thoughts on that. Let me know if you think there would have been another alternate outcome had it been a different set of characters inside opposed to the ones we had. Again, I want to know your thoughts. And I didn't mean to say Annie, I meant to say Grace. But do you guys think there would have been a different or better outcome had it been him inside or neither one of them inside? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video.
This film was so awesome. Listen, I don't want to spoil any more for you. If you have not seen this film, go see Sinners. I'm not, I don't get paid for any of this, but me and my wife, we just went to go see it on Monday, and I'm recording this on Wednesday. So, I'm if you're the type of person who like me, you usually don't like to go on the first night to see a film unless it's a Marvel film. You might want to wait, and you've waited like a week or two to go see the film like I did. Just know you don't want to see too many videos like this, right? You don't want to see spoiler videos, unless you're the type of person where you really don't care. But there's so many gems in this film, and there's so many important things that come up for discussion from every angle, because the representation within this film is from all sides, right? You have the European representation, you have even the racist representation, you have the black folks, you have the Asians, you have the the little sprinkle of native indigenous representation. It was a really good film, even with Mary, where she's between worlds, where she can go between the black and the white world, because technically she would have been considered black even though she's white presenting. It's a really good film. So check it out. I don't have anything else to say. That's my rant. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, follow, all of the above. Blessings. Have a beautiful day.